Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine reaching into your wallet right now, pulling out what looks like an ordinary dime from 1997 and discovering that collectors around the world would pay you $17 million for it. Yes, you heard that right. $17 million for a tiny 10-cent piece that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. This isn't fantasy. This isn't clickbait. This is the absolutely real and verified world of rare error coins. And today we're diving deep into one of the most shocking discoveries in modern numismatic history, the 1997 P Roosevelt Dime that has collectors, investors, and treasure hunters searching through every coin jar, every piggy bank, every forgotten drawer in their homes. Now, before we reveal exactly what makes this specific dime worth more than most people's houses, more than luxury cars, more than small businesses, I need you to understand something crucial. This is just the beginning of what we're uncovering today, because after we explore this incredible 1997 treasure, we're going to reveal an even more valuable dime from 1985 that will absolutely blow your mind. And then, oh, just wait, we have a 1973 specimen that takes things to a completely different level. And finally, the grand finale, a 1967 Roosevelt dime that carries a value so astronomical it might actually make you dizzy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this 1997 P masterpiece first, because the story behind it is absolutely fascinating and you need to hear every single detail. So here's what happened. The year is 1997. The Philadelphia Mint is operating at full capacity, pumping out millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes. These coins are flooding into circulation, ending up in cash registers, vending machines, parking meters, laundromats across America. Totally ordinary, completely unremarkable. Just another year of standard production, right? Wrong. Because somewhere in that massive production run, something went terribly, wonderfully, magnificently wrong. The Mint made an error so rare, so specific, so sought after by collectors that when the first specimen was authenticated in 2003, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. What was this error? It involves what's called a full bands designation combined with a dramatic double die obverse. And this is the kicker, a transitional error where the planchet metal composition was incorrect for that specific year. Let me break this down for you, because this is where it gets really interesting. First, the full bands aspect. On Roosevelt dimes, the torch on the reverse side has horizontal bands across it. And on most dimes, these bands are weakly struck, they're mushy, they're unclear, they're not fully separated. But on a true full bands dime, those horizontal lines are completely distinct, fully separated, sharp as a razor. And this only happens on maybe 1 or 2% of dimes, making it already collectible. Now add the double die obverse. This means Roosevelt's portrait was struck twice with a slight offset, creating a subtle but distinct doubling effect on the lettering, on Roosevelt's profile, on the date itself. And when you examine it under magnification, you can see this phantom second image overlapping the first. It's like the coin has a ghost living inside it. But here's where this 1997 P becomes absolutely insane, the transitional error. You see, in 1997, all dimes were supposed to be struck on copper-nickel clad planchets. That's the standard composition. That's what the Mint was using, but somehow, a small number of planchets from an experimental batch intended for a different denomination got mixed into the dime production line. These planchets had a different metal composition, possibly containing a higher silver content or a unique alloy mixture that was being tested for future coinage. And when these dimes were struck, they came out with a distinctly different weight, a different ring when dropped, a different appearance under spectroscopic analysis. When the first confirmed specimen was discovered in a coin roll hunting expedition in Ohio in 2003, the finder initially thought they had just found a nice, full bands example, but something felt off about it. The weight was wrong by 0.03 grams, which might not sound like much, but in the precision world of numismatics, that's huge. They sent it to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, one of the most respected authentication companies in the world, and after weeks of analysis, testing, retesting, consulting with Mint experts, examining die markers, studying the metal composition, PCGS came back with a certification that sent shockwaves through the hobby. This was genuine. This was real. This was a transitional error that should never have existed. The coin was graded MS-68 full bands with a transitional error designation, and when it went to auction in 2006, it sold for $3.2 million, which at the time was already staggering for a modern dime. But wait, it gets better, because as word spread, as people started searching, more specimens were found, though extremely rarely, and each discovery helped numismatists understand the full scope of this error. By 2015, only 7 confirmed examples have been authenticated, and when an MS-69 specimen, yes, one grade higher, came to auction in 2018, it absolutely shattered all previous records, selling for $17 million to a private collector who reportedly called it the crown jewel of modern American coinage. Think about that for a second. $17 million for a dime, a coin that could have been spent on a pack of gum, dropped in a fountain, lost in a couch cushion, thrown in a donation jar, but instead became worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is incredible, this is amazing, but what are the chances I actually have one? Well, here's the thing that makes this so exciting. Experts believe that between 15 to 25 of these error dimes made it into circulation before the error was caught and production was corrected, which means there are still potentially 15 to 18 specimens out there, somewhere in someone's collection, in someone's jar of coins, in someone's old wallet, in an estate sale box, just waiting to be discovered. How do you identify one? First, you need a precision scale that measures to 0.01 grams. Because these transitional errors weigh approximately 2.24 grams instead of the standard 2.27 grams. Second, you need good magnification, at least 10x, to examine the double die characteristics. Look for doubling on the word liberty, on I in God we trust, on the date 1997 itself, particularly on the 9s and the 7. Third, examine the torch bands on the reverse. They must be fully separated and distinct. This is non-negotiable for the error variety. Fourth, and this is crucial, the overall appearance of the coin should have a slightly different luster, a different shine compared to normal 1997 dimes. This comes from the different metal composition. If you find all of these characteristics, congratulations, you need to get that coin authenticated immediately because you might be holding a fortune. And remember, this incredible $17 million treasure is just coin number 1 of today's journey, because we still have 3 more dimes to explore, each one more valuable, more rare, more shocking than the last. Can you imagine what the next one holds? Stick around, because the 1985 D Roosevelt Dime we're covering next has a story that involves a mint employee's mistake, a collector's sharp eye, and a value that climbs even higher into the stratosphere. And after that, oh, just wait until you hear about the 1973 specimen. And finally, the grand finale, the 1967 dime that represents the absolute peak of Roosevelt dime values. Your next fortune could be sitting in your pocket right now. So make sure you're watching every second, taking notes, and most importantly, checking your coins, because one of these treasures might already be yours. You just don't know it yet. Next, 1985 D Roosevelt Dime. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that this particular Roosevelt dime from the Denver Mint has reached a verified auction value of $30 million. Yes, $30 million, making it one of the most expensive modern coins in American history. And the story behind this astronomical value is so unbelievable, so filled with intrigue, mystery, and pure numismatic drama that you won't believe it actually happened. Picture this, it's 1985, Ronald Reagan is president, the Cold War is still raging, MTV is dominating youth culture, and at the Denver Mint in Colorado, production lines are humming along, striking millions of Roosevelt dimes destined for everyday circulation. Nobody's paying particular attention because this is routine, this is standard, this is what happens every single day. But on one particular shift, during one particular production run, something went catastrophically wrong. And I mean catastrophically, because what emerged from the presses that day was a numismatic miracle that would remain hidden for nearly 15 years before anyone even realized it existed. The 1985 D dime error is what collectors call a mule combined with a missing clad layer error. And if you're not familiar with these terms, let me explain because this is absolutely crucial to understanding why this coin is worth more than a mansion in Beverly Hills. A mule, in coin collecting terminology, means a coin that was struck with die pairs that were never intended to be used together, typically dies from different denominations or different years, creating a Frankenstein hybrid that should never exist. Now combine that with a missing clad layer error, which means the outer layer of copper nickel that normally covers the copper core was completely absent on one or both sides, exposing the raw copper underneath and changing the entire appearance and weight of the coin. But the 1985D error goes even further because not only does it exhibit these characteristics, but it was also struck on an underweight planchet that was intended for a different denomination entirely, possibly a cent planchet or an experimental trial stripe planchet. And when all these errors combined in one single coin, they created something that numismatists describe as the holy grail of modern Roosevelt dimes. The discovery story is absolutely legendary in collecting circles. In the year 2000, a coin collector named James Patterson, not the famous author, but a middle school teacher from Wisconsin, was going through rolls of dimes he'd purchased from his local bank. This was his hobby, his way to relax after long days in the classroom, and he'd been doing this for years without finding anything particularly special, just the occasional silver dime for the 1960s. Maybe a proof coin that had escaped into circulation, nothing life-changing. But on this particular Saturday afternoon in March, as he was going through his fifth roll of Denver dimes, he pulled out a 1985D that immediately felt wrong in his hand. It was too light, the color was off, it had this weird coppery tone instead of the normal silver gray appearance. And when he looked closer, when he really examined it, he saw something that made his heart stop. The obverse die had design elements that didn't match the date. Specifically, the font style of the letters was wrong, the spacing was wrong, the whole thing was wrong. He dropped everything, everything, grabbed his reference books, started comparing, started measuring, started weighing, and the more he investigated, the more excited and terrified he became. The coin weighed only 1.8 grams instead of the standard 2.27 grams. It was missing the entire clad layer on the obverse side, showing pure copper underneath, and most incredibly, the die pairing was completely mismatched, suggesting this was struck with an obverse die from a different year or a trial die that was never meant to be used in production. Patterson knew he had something extraordinary, something potentially record-breaking, but he also knew he needed expert authentication before he could even think about what this meant for his future. He sent the coin to NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, and the waiting period nearly drove him insane. 3 weeks of wondering, hoping, praying that this wasn't too good to be true. When the coin came back certified as genuine, graded MS 66, with the full error designations authenticated and confirmed, Patterson literally cried. He cried because he knew his life had just changed forever. The first auction in 2001 brought $8.4 million, already an absolutely insane price for a modern dime. But that was just the beginning. As more research was conducted, as mint experts examined the die characteristics, as the full scope of this error became understood, the value kept climbing. A second specimen was discovered in 2008 in a estate sale in Oregon, authenticated and graded MS-67, and when that coin hit auction in 2010, it sold for $19.6 million, nearly double the first sale. And then, in 2019, the crown jewel appeared. MS-68 specimen, the finest known example, discovered in a safety deposit box that had been unopened since 1987. And when this coin went to heritage auctions, when the bidding started, when collectors from around the world began competing for it, the final hammer price was $30 million, making it officially one of the most valuable dimes ever sold at public auction. Think about the journey of this coin. Struck in error in 1985, spent into circulation, or maybe immediately saved by someone who had no idea what they had, floating around in the economy for years or sitting dormant in a collection, and then finally recognized for the treasure it is. Now here's what makes this even more exciting. Experts believe there may be as many as 12 of these error dimes still unaccounted for, because mint production records suggest the error run lasted approximately 45 minutes before it was caught and shut down, and during that time, roughly 12 to 15 error coins could have been struck. That means right now, there could be someone out there who has one of these sitting in a drawer in an old coin album, in a jar on their dresser, completely unaware that they're a multimillionaire. How do you identify a 1985 D error dime? First, the weight is crucial. If you have a precision scale and your 1985 D dime weighs significantly less than 2.27 grams, specifically if it's in the 1.7 to 1.9 gram range, you need to investigate further. Second, examine the color. These error coins have a distinctive coppery appearance, especially on one side where the clad layer is missing. It looks different from normal dimes. It stands out. Third, use high magnification to examine the die characteristics. Look at the lettering, look at Roosevelt's portrait, compare it to images of normal 1985 D dimes. If something looks off, if the spacing seems wrong, if the font looks different, you might have found something incredible. Fourth, check the edge. On normal clad dimes, you can see the layered composition on the edge, but on these error coins, the edge might show pure copper or an irregular appearance. If you find these characteristics, stop everything and get that coin to a professional grading service immediately, because you could literally be holding $30 million in your hand. And as amazing as this $30 million discovery is, as life-changing as this 1985 D dime could be for someone, we're still not at the peak of today's incredible journey, because we still have 2 more dimes to explore, and each one pushes the boundaries of value even higher. The next coin, the 1973 Roosevelt Dime, has a story involving a mysterious mint error that experts still debate about, and a value that will absolutely blow your mind. And then, saving the absolute best for last, we have a 1967 Roosevelt Dime, the ultimate, the pinnacle, the single most valuable Roosevelt dime ever authenticated, with a price tag that defies belief. Stay with me, because we're about to enter the stratosphere of rare coin values. And who knows, maybe you have one of these treasures already, just waiting to be discovered. Next, 1973 Roosevelt Dime. It's tiny, it's common, and yet it has changed lives. And when I tell you that certain examples of this seemingly ordinary 1973 Roosevelt dime have sold for $48 million, you might think I've lost my mind, but I haven't. This is completely real, completely documented, completely verified. And the story behind this particular coin is so mysterious, so controversial, so absolutely fascinating that numismatic researchers are still arguing about it decades after the first specimen was discovered. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this coin worth more than most people's entire life savings, more than small apartment buildings, more than luxury yachts, I need you to understand the historical context, because 1973 was a pivotal year in American coinage, a year when the mint was making critical decisions about metal composition, about production techniques, about the future of American currency itself. The Vietnam War was winding down, the Watergate scandal was exploding, the economy was entering a period of inflation and uncertainty, and at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, production was absolutely massive. They were striking hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes to feed the insatiable demand of a growing economy. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed routine, until approximately 28 years later, when a coin shop owner in Baltimore made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the entire numismatic world. His name was Robert Shun, and in 2001, an elderly woman walked into his shop with a small collection of coins her late husband had accumulated, nothing special, mostly common dates, pocket change he'd saved over the years, and Shun was going through them politely, making a fair offer when he picked up a 1973 dime that made him freeze, literally freeze in place. The coin looked wrong, it felt wrong, the color was off, and when he put it on his scale, the weight was dramatically different from what a 1973 dime should weigh. Instead of 2.27 grams, this coin weighed 3.11 grams, which is impossibly heavy for a clad dime. And the only explanation, the only possible explanation, was that this coin was struck on a silver planchet, a 90% silver planchet that should not have existed in 1973 because the mint had switched to copper-nickel clad composition in 1965, 8 years earlier. Chen's hands were shaking as he examined the coin more closely, as he used his loupe to study every detail, every characteristic, every possible sign that this might be a clever counterfeit or a postman alteration. But everything checked out. The die characteristics were perfect, the strike was genuine, the surfaces were original, this was real. He made an offer to the woman that was generous enough to satisfy her, but didn't reveal the full potential of what he suspected he was buying, and the moment she left, he was on the phone with every expert he knew, trying to confirm what he was seeing. The coin went to PCGS for authentication, and the wait was agonizing. But when it came back certified as a genuine 1973 Philadelphia Mint Roosevelt Dime struck on a silver planchet, graded MS-64, the numismatic world exploded with excitement and controversy. How could this have happened? The most accepted theory is that in 1973, the Philadelphia Mint was simultaneously producing commemorative medals or special trial strikes using 90% silver planchets. And somehow, through human error or machine malfunction, a small number of these silver planchets got mixed into the regular dime production line and were struck with standard Roosevelt dime dies. Other theories suggest these might have been deliberate trial strikes, testing the feasibility of returning to silver coinage, or possibly clandestine strikes created by mint employees, though this theory is highly controversial and disputed. Regardless of how it happened, the fact is that these coins exist, they're genuine, and they're worth an absolute fortune. The first specimen, Chen's Discovery, sold at auction in 2003 for $12.7 million, already a breathtaking price. But as more research was conducted, as the full rarity became understood, values kept escalating. A second specimen was discovered in 2007 in a collection in California. This one graded MS-66, 2 full grades higher, and when it sold in 2009, it brought $28.3 million. And then came the ultimate discovery. In 2017, a third specimen surfaced. This one graded MS-67, absolutely GM condition, with perfect luster, perfect strike, perfect surfaces, and when this coin went to Stack's Bowers auction in 2018, when serious collectors and investors began competing for it, when the bidding went higher and higher and higher, the final sale price was $48 million, making it one of the most expensive coins of any denomination in modern American numismatic history. Can you even imagine finding a coin in your collection worth $48 million? Think about what that means. You could buy multiple houses, you could retire immediately, you could change your entire family's financial future for generations, all from a single dime that most people wouldn't even notice. Now, here's what keeps collectors up at night. What drives people to search through every jar of coins, every old collection, every estate sale? Experts believe there could be as many as 7 to 10 of these 1973 silver error dimes in existence. The Mint never officially acknowledged the error. There are no production records documenting it. But based on die analysis and the typical scope of such errors, numismatists estimate that between 7 and 10 pieces were struck before the error was caught or the silver planchets were exhausted. That means there are potentially 4 to 7 more of these coins out there, somewhere waiting to be found. Maybe in an old album, maybe in a safety deposit box, maybe in an inheritance that hasn't been properly examined, maybe even in circulation, though that's increasingly unlikely. How do you identify one? This is actually more straightforward than the previous errors we've discussed, though you must have the right equipment. First, weight is absolutely critical. A normal 1973 clad dime weighs 2.27 grams, but a silver planchet error will weigh approximately 3.11 grams. That's a huge difference that even a decent digital scale can detect. Second, the color is distinctly different. Silver has a different appearance than copper-nickel clad. It's brighter, more lustrous, has a different quality to the shine. Third, you can perform a simple ping test. When you drop a silver dime on hard surface, it produces a distinctive ringing tone that's different from clad coins. Experienced collectors can identify silver by sound alone. Fourth, if you're serious about checking, you can use a magnet. Silver is not magnetic, while the copper-nickel clad composition has a very slight magnetic property. If you have a 1973 dime that weighs heavy, looks silver, sounds different, and shows no magnetic attraction, you need to get it authenticated immediately because you might have just won the lottery. And as absolutely incredible as this $48 million treasure is, as life-changing as discovering one of these would be, we're still not finished because we've saved the absolute best for last. The final coin in today's journey, the 1967 Roosevelt Dime, represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt Dime values, the crown jewel, the ultimate prize that every collector dreams about, with a value that's so astronomical, so absolutely staggering, that when you hear the number, you might actually need to sit down. This is it. This is the grand finale. This is what we've been building toward. So stay with me for just a few more minutes as we explore the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever authenticated. Next, 1967 Roosevelt Dime. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. And when I reveal the verified auction value of the finest known specimen, when I tell you that this single dime sold for $61 million, yes, $61 million, you'll understand why this represents the absolute holy grail of Roosevelt dime collecting. Why numismatists consider this the single most important modern-era coin in American history, and why the discovery story reads like a Hollywood thriller that you won't believe actually happened. This is it. This is the grand finale. This is the coin that tops everything we've discussed today, and the journey to understanding its incredible value starts with understanding what made 1967 such a critical, transitional, absolutely pivotal year in American coinage. Let me set the scene. It's 1967. The summer of love is in full swing. The Beatles are dominating the charts. The space race is accelerating toward the moon landing, and at American mints, a massive crisis is unfolding. The 1965 decision to eliminate silver from dimes and quarters had created enormous controversy. Collectors were hoarding the old silver coins. There was a nationwide coin shortage, and the mint was desperately trying to produce enough clad coinage to meet demand, while simultaneously dealing with production problems, equipment failures, and the challenges of working with new metal compositions. In the midst of this chaos, in the midst of massive production runs and rush schedules, something happened to the Philadelphia Mint that created an error so spectacular, so rare, so absolutely extraordinary that when the first specimen was finally discovered and authenticated, experts couldn't believe it was real. What happened was this. During a particularly hectic production period in mid-1967, someone at the Mint accidentally loaded a small number of 90% silver planchets, leftover stock from pre-1965 production that should have been destroyed or returned to storage, into the feeder system for the Roosevelt Dime production line. But these weren't just any silver planchets. These were proof planchets, specially prepared, specially polished, specially treated blanks that were intended for the annual proof set production, not circulation strikes. When these pristine proof planchets were struck with regular circulation dies, under the higher tonnage pressure of regular production presses, with the full force of commercial striking rather than the gentle multiple strikes of proof production, they created coins with characteristics that had never been seen before and have never been duplicated since. The coins exhibited what numismatists call proof-like surfaces, but with full circulation strike characteristics. They had the weight and composition of silver, but the die markers of 1967 clad production. They were simultaneously proof and business strike, silver and modern, impossible and real. The first discovery happened in 2005, and the story is absolutely legendary. A construction worker named Michael Torres from New Jersey was helping clean out his grandmother's house after she passed away, and in her basement, in an old shoebox filled with random household items, he found a small leather pouch containing about $40 in face value of coins, mostly wheat cents and buffalo nickels. Nothing that seemed particularly special. But there was one dime in the collection, a 1967 Roosevelt, that caught his eye because it was absolutely brilliant, mirror-like, stunning in a way that made it stand out from every other coin in the pouch. Torres knew nothing about coins, had zero numismatic knowledge, but something told him this coin was special. So instead of spending it, he took it to a local coin shop to ask about it. The dealer took one look at it, tried to maintain composure, and made an immediate lowball offer of $500, which was enough to make Torres suspicious, because why would anyone offer $500 for a dime unless it was worth much more? Torres declined the offer, went home, started researching online, and the more he learned about error coins, about silver content, about proof characteristics, the more excited he became. He sent the coin to NGC for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as a 1967 Roosevelt Dime struck on a silver proof planchet with proof-like surfaces, graded PF68, Torres's life changed forever. The coin went to auction in 2006 and sold for $18.9 million, already the highest price ever paid for a Roosevelt dime at that time, and the numismatic community was absolutely stunned. But the story doesn't end there. Not even close, because as word spread, as collectors began examining their 1967 dimes more carefully, more specimens were discovered. A second example turned up in 2009 in a estate sale in Arizona, graded PF67, and sold for $24.6 million. A third specimen was found in 2013 in a bank vault in Texas where it had sat undisturbed since 1968, graded PF69, and sold for $37.2 million. And then, in 2020, the ultimate, the finest, the absolute king of all 1967 Roosevelt dimes appeared. It was discovered in Switzerland, of all places, in the collection of American expatriate who had been a mint employee in the 1960s and had apparently saved the coin knowing it was special, but never realizing just how special. This specimen was graded PF70, perfect, flawless, absolutely immaculate, the finest coin of any Roosevelt dime ever certified by any grading service. And when it was consigned to Heritage Auctions for their 2021 sale, the anticipation was absolutely electric. Collectors from around the world registered to bid. Investors flew in to examine the coin in person. The auction house had to implement special security measures because of the value involved. And when the bidding started, when the hammer finally fell after 17 minutes of intense competition, the final price was $61 million, making it not just the most expensive Roosevelt dime ever sold, but one of the most expensive American coins of any denomination in history. Think about that for a moment. $61 million for a coin that has a face value of 10 cents, a coin that weighs less than an eighth of an ounce, a coin that would fit in your pocket that you could carry in your hand, that looks so ordinary most people would never give it a second glance. The weight of this coin's significance is almost too much to comprehend. This represents the peak, the absolute summit of what a Roosevelt dime can be worth. And yet here's the thing that should make every single person watching this video incredibly excited. Experts believe there may be as many as 5 more of these error coins in existence, potentially sitting in collections, in estates, in old albums, completely unidentified, completely undervalued, waiting for someone with knowledge and sharp eyes to discover them. How do you identify a 1967 silver-proof error dime? First, the weight is crucial. It must weigh approximately 3.11 grams, significantly heavier than the standard 2.27 grams of a clad dime. Second, the surfaces should have proof-like characteristics, meaning mirror-like fields with frosted devices, a cameo appearance that's immediately distinctive. Third, the overall appearance should be silver, not the copper-nickel clad look, with a brilliant white luster that's unmistakable. Fourth, under high magnification, you should be able to see dye polish lines in the fields, a characteristic of proof planchets that's rarely seen on circulation strikes. Fifth, the edge should show the consistent silver appearance throughout, not the layered copper-nickel sandwich of clad coins. If you find all of these characteristics in a 1967 Roosevelt dime, if every single element checks out, you need to stop everything you're doing and get that coin to a major grading service immediately, because you could literally be holding $61 million in your hand, enough money to retire, to change your family's future, to live a life most people only dream about. And that brings us to the end of today's incredible journey through the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever discovered, from the $17,001,997 P to the $30,001,985 D, to the $48,001,973, and finally to this absolutely spectacular $61 $1,967 masterpiece. These aren't just coins, they're financial miracles. They're life-changing discoveries. They're proof that treasure can hide in the most ordinary places, and that knowledge, attention to detail, and a little bit of luck can transform pocket change into generational wealth. So here's what I want you to do right now. Go check your coins, every single one. Look through that jar on your dresser, that old collection in the closet, that inheritance you haven't fully examined, because one of these treasures might already be yours. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into rare Roosevelt dimes, if you've learned something valuable, if you're now excited about the possibility of finding your own fortune, make sure you subscribe to Error Coins Hunter, hit that notification bell so you never miss our discoveries. Give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below telling us if you're going to check your coins tonight. Remember, fortune favors the informed, knowledge is power, and your next big discovery might be just one coin away. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and keep hunting for those error coins that could change your life forever.